This is Ag Matters PM from the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network, brought to you by the Iowa Soybean Association, your daily recap of the information that affects Iowa's farmers, producers, and consumers, right here in the heart of the heartland. With reports from our award-winning broadcast team of Dustin Hoffman, Riley Smith, and Mark Magnuson. Now, from the IARN studios in Des Moines, here's Riley Smith.
Well, good day, everyone, and welcome to Ag Matters PM from the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network. I'm Dustin Hoffman, coming to you from Washington, D.C. Here's where for the National Association of Farm Broadcasting's Washington Watch event, having a chance to talk with all sorts of policymakers and also ag groups out there to see what is going on here in the nation's capital. Coming up a little later on the program, we'll talk to the folks of the National Pork Producers Council. But first, I want to send it back to Mark and Riley in Des Moines, and they're going to take a look at the closing markets. It's time now for the Ag Matters PM Closing Market Summary, your source for market analysis and settlement prices from the day's trade in Chicago, courtesy of the folks at agmarket.net.
Well, thank you, Dustin, and it's time now for our closing market coverage, and we now are joined by Robin Schmahl of agmarket.net for our closing market summary. Robin, a busy week last week in the marketplace, but very volatile. As the markets started up today, look quite a bit different. What happened with the grains today?
Well, yeah, we didn't see quite the activity as we saw last week. And I think the markets are going to be more volatile this year, or at least this summer, than probably we've seen in a lot of times, because I think there's so much uncertainty in the markets, not only just because of the grain markets, but the whole economy in general, world economy. So we're going to see quite a bit of that. But today we were somewhat benign. We did see corn claw back from about 4 cents or so lower into the close, which are pretty close to unchanged or just down slightly. Soybeans, they moved back and forth a little bit, but stayed positive most of the day. Soybean meal, the strong one, showing some real gains there. We looked at export inspections. Corn was at 48.3 million bushels. That was down 17.1 million bushels. Not a good sign. Soybeans, 9.2 million bushels, down 7.1 million bushels. And wheat at 17.7 million bushels, which was up 1.1 million bushels from last week. So that hence we could kind of we're seeing a little bit of a more of a competition coming in for our exports for corn and soybeans primarily. And that's something that's been ongoing for the last few years. And we're going to continue to see that. The U.S. soybeans are priced, the latest is $2.30 a bushel over the Board of Trade for the export market, when you're putting it into a bushel standpoint, where Brazilian beans are at $1.30 above. So China's been moving more over toward South America, picking up more supplies from there. So we have some headwinds there that we're dealing with. So it's going to be a real issue as we move through the rest of this year and maybe years to come, unless there's some changes that are made. And that's why we're seeing limited upside potential as far as our beans are concerned now. A situation potentially down the road where Brazil could have some weather impact, lower production, not so much this year anymore than what's already there, but next year, that'll be what's needed in order to support our prices that much more. Otherwise, we may see the potential that we need to find lower ways to produce soybeans, lower costs in order to be competitive. That we don't like to say that, but that's what we're looking at when we're on a world market. Now, we have a planting progress out this afternoon. They're looking at corn planted at 26%, right on line with last year at 26%. Soybeans at 17%. Last year it was 19%. Spring wheat at 26% planted. That's way ahead of last year when it was 12% at this time. And winter wheat crop condition, they're looking at 49% good to excellent on the report this afternoon, compared to 28% last year. Now, Argentina Oilseeds Workers Union begins a strike today or began a strike today. The strike will impact the San Lorenzo port and affect 80% of the oilseed companies that use that port. And there's also another one in Sanasa, which is going to run for 72 hours. They're just having a limit on it. The one in San Lorenzo doesn't have a limit on it right now. They're just protesting some other policies that Brazil is putting in effect. So that's provided the support that we needed in the soybean complex today.
Let's go over to the other side of the ag marketplace in the livestock complex. You want to talk about volatility, Robin. The cattle marketplace has certainly been volatile. What did we see with the protein sector today?
Yeah, cattle is up and down all over the place. A lot of it's perception, psychological, ideas in the market. Some of it's fundamental. Now, April was up higher today, goes off the board tomorrow. So the June cattle will take over as front month after tomorrow. And that was the only contract posting a gain. Now, futures were slowly declining much of the day, starting lower and then slowly declining much of the day. But that's tied to concerns that developed again over demand as we come into the summer time frame. We're looking at the economic situation, but higher prices where we see box beef. Now, box beef was kind of mixed last week, choppy. Today, we're seeing choice up 40 cents, select up 227 at the midday report. Cash last week was a victory for the feedlots. The southern cattle were steady money they traded, and northern cattle were $2 higher. That was not expected at the beginning of the week, but along with that, the packers, what they purchased last week, 26% of those cattle are for deferred delivery. So that puts them in a little better position this week to potentially not have to bid higher than steady money. So feedlots might have their work cut out for them this week as far as trying to get packers to step up to the plate. Hogs, they bounced off support today. I mean, we saw 3 days of liquidation last week, more so on Thursday, Friday. Today we saw some lower prices, but they bounced off of support, came back nicely, more to a mixed close. So that gives the indication that a liquidation is maybe finished for this round. Now, again, as with beef, there's some concern over consumer demand coming into the summer time frame. Pork prices are higher, but still, I think that based on what we have been seeing as far as hog prices and the cutout prices, that I think the consumer demand seems to be holding fairly well. Now, midday cutout prices today were phenomenal, up $7.09. And bellies were up $31.99. I don't think I've ever seen bellies see that much of a big jump, but they were quite significant. Now, that's probably not where it's going to be the end of the day, but cutout values up that far coming out of the weekend really gives an indication that weekend demand was fairly good. Now, there were no cash prices released today due to packer confidentiality. Typically, when we see that, sometimes we see higher cash. So we'll see that at the end of today or maybe tomorrow to see what kind of cash prices we saw today.
He is Robin Schmahl of agmarket.net, our guest here today for our closing markets. Robin, what's the best way for our viewers to get in touch for more marketing information?
They can call me directly at 877-256-3253, or they can go to our website, agmarket.net. There's an 844 number there. They can feel free to call in, and somebody will pick up the phone and answer their questions.
Well, Robin, thanks so much for the time. Always good to talk with you. Have a great week, and we'll speak again soon.
All right. Thank you. It's always a pleasure.
May corn closes down 3/4 cent at $4.39 1/4. May soybeans up 1 1/4 at $11.60 3/4. May soybean meal up $8.30 at $3.4830. May soybean oil down $1.24 at $43.69. Chicago wheat down 13 even at $5.90 1/4. Minneapolis wheat up 18 even at $7.15 1/4. Kansas City hard red wheat down 2 1/2 at $6.43 3/4. May oats down 2 1/2 at $3.71 1/4. On the Merc, June live cattle down $1.42 at $177.15. May feeder cattle down 67 cents at $248.02. May lean hogs down 25 cents at $94.02. May pork cutout down 5 cents at $103.12. And Class 3 milk up 6 cents at $18.09.
And that's been a check of the closing market recap. We're going to take a short break and hear from our sponsor, the Iowa Soybean Association and the Soy Checkoff. When we come back, we'll talk with the National Pork Producers Council. This is Ag Matters PM.
Iowa Soybean Association is driven to deliver for Iowa's 40,000 soybean farmers. We're proud to provide objective agronomic research, a helping hand with soil and water stewardship, and timely industry news powered by the Soybean Checkoff. Learn more at iasoybeans.com.
Welcome back to Ag Matters PM from the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network. I'm Dustin Huffman. Well, down here in Washington, we have the chance to talk with many ag organizations to talk about what's top of mind and, of course, first and foremost in their minds when it comes to ag policy. One of those, of course, the National Pork Producers Council, and as we're getting very close to World Pork Expo, I had a chance to talk with them about the things that they're bringing here to Washington, D.C. All right, we are at Washington Watch 2024, Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network, talking with National Pork Producers Council President Lori Stevermer from Minnesota, and she's the president. And Lori, thanks so much for coming out to Washington.
Well, thank you. I'm happy to be here.
So, of course, a lot of things that we're talking about, especially in Washington, have to do with the government, and I think first and foremost is the Prop 12, finding a solution through Congress. What kind of things are we looking at, and how are things going right now?
Well, Prop 12 has been an issue we've been dealing with for quite some time, and we are hopeful that we're going to find a federal solution to it in the Farm Bill. And so that's where our conversations have been, and I'm really looking forward to that Farm Bill then for the Prop 12 solution.
And so obviously the Farm Bill is behind schedule. We know it's been kicked down the can for this year, but what's the message we're also getting to the importance overall? I mean, obviously you're a pork producer, but I'm sure you're also a grain farmer, just like everything else. The importance of getting this done.
You know, you're right. Everybody is anxious to get it done. I mean, whether it's us as pork, corn, soybeans, we talk about the value of the Farm Bill across agriculture, and really people feel that, and that message is getting out. So even though it may be delayed, I mean, we're still hopeful that something's going to happen yet this year.
Okay, and besides Prop 12, what other concerns are you focusing on, especially that need to be addressed in the Farm Bill or from policy standpoint?
Well, I would say for the Farm Bill, that is where our funding is for what we call that three-legged stool. So that's funding for our National Animal Health Lab Network, so the NALM labs. We also have funding for a veterinary stockpile, and then funding for a veterinary vaccine bank. Really, I would just sum that up and say animal health is also an important part of the Farm Bill. And then the other aspect would be just funding for FMD, which is not foreign animal disease, but market development. And so continuing to get funding to expand markets and improve exports.
So lots of things to be thinking about. And of course, you know, a lot of it has to do with maintaining the health of those hogs, as you mentioned. You know, we talk about African swine fever, so far still at bay. I mean, how are we doing on getting, I know there's still a lot of research going on vaccines. How are things coming? Can you speak to that at all?
I know there is work going on with the vaccines. I continue to look at them. I would say in terms of disease prevention and preparedness, this past forum, our delegate body approved standards for traceability that we will submit to USDA. And that's going to be really important. So as we look at our trading partners, they want to know where the disease is and where it isn't. So having that traceability program will be key. It'll also help our health officials like veterinarians and their state health officials understand where the disease is at and really get in there and address it faster.
And, you know, really to illustrate the point of how important that is, I mean, what we're seeing right now with the birds and with the dairy cattle, this is a great example of why we need to be ready at a moment's notice.
Well, yeah, and it's an example on two different aspects. One, you know, the importance of our labs and testing, and two, the importance of traceability or understanding how that disease moves. But I want to make sure that, you know, people know overall that what's going on with the H5N1 is not a food safety issue. I mean, pork is safe, milk is safe, it's pasteurized, so, consumers need to feel confident yet in the American food supply.
Okay, anything else that our Iowa pork producers need to know as we get ready to heading towards World Pork Expo coming up very soon?
Well, I would just say we are all looking forward to World Pork Expo. It's our big event. It's a great opportunity for producers to come together, to collaborate, to exchange ideas, and just really showcase all that is good with the pork industry. So certainly invite everybody that can to come to the World Pork Expo, which will be June 5th and 6th.
And that's been the folks from the National Pork Producers Council here on Ag Matters PM. And that's the end of today's show. You can find all our content online at iowaagnet.com. While you're there, don't forget to follow us on Facebook, X, LinkedIn, and on our YouTube channel. While you're there, subscribe and hit the bell icon so you're notified each time we put out a new video project. Don't forget about our free 3 times a day market podcast coming to you morning, midday, and closings with the analysis sent right to your mobile device on Google, Amazon, Apple, Spotify, and Podbean. From Washington, D.C., the nation's capital, I'm Dustin Hoffman. For Riley Smith and Andy Peterson and Mark Magnuson back in Iowa, we thank you for watching. This has been Ag Matters PM.